The network right now, and it's kind of.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Ben.
I want to introduce Elonka Doonan. Most of you know her very well. She's been at the con for a long time. Used to be president and chair of the National 2600. Her books are for sale over at registration. She will sign them for you. So
For free.
For free, yes, she'll sign them for free. And some of the money from those books go to the con, so please purchase a book. And fascinating fact about Elonka, every continent you've visited. Former Navy, right?
Air Force.
Air Force, oh goodness, terrible. Anyway, Elonka's been a great friend to this conference, and I was telling them earlier, the reason why we do board games is because you introduced me to Catan while you were president of the conference, and so I'm like, oh, and then my family's in it and everything like that. So please welcome Elonka Doonan.
Thanks, Ben. By the way, the books, 100% of the money is going to the con. None of it's going to me. So just wanted to say that. You can hear me in the back? Can you hear me in the other room?
Yeah, that's better.
So, Voynich Manuscript. How many of you have heard of it? All right. How many have no clue what it is? It's okay. All right. Good. So after this, you should have an idea. It is called the world's most enigmatic, the world's most mysterious book. It's 600 years old, and a bit about me, game developer. I've been a Voynich enthusiast for many years. Here is a reunion of Voynich enthusiasts in Rome at the Villa Mondragone in 2012. You can see me on the right there. Holding my replica of the Voynich, which I'll tell you about in a minute. Also, I visited the Folger Library and also had my replica there. And another talk I gave on the Voynich. Okay, and I've written books, as you heard. So it comes from the 1400s. And has hundreds of pages. It is handwritten, hand-drawn. 230 pages of vellum, probably more, from several calfskins and hundreds of illustrations. The cover may have been goatskin, but it may have been added later. And here's the script.
One ring.
Author, unknown. Content, unknown. Place of origin, unknown.
Maybe it's 4 big mysteries.
No, I'm interested. What do you say?
4 big mysteries. But how to read it?
Uh-huh. Okay, it's called the Voynich Manuscript because it was purchased in 1912 by Wilfrid Voynich, a rare book dealer. He was also a Polish revolutionary. And so it became known as the Voynich Library, or the Voynich Manuscript. Right? And then he owned it until his death, then it passed to his widow and a friend and some others, to the Yale University Voynich Rare Book Library, 1969, where it became known as MS-408, Manuscript 408. So it was dated in 2009 by a professor from the University of Arizona, or Tucson, and he sliced off tiny, tiny, tiny shreds for the pages, the vellum, the calfskin, and did radiocarbon dating on it. So these are the graphs of the radiocarbon dating, meaning it's probably not from this time, probably this time, and you can see that they're all very similar. And when we combine them all and average them, The vellum was most likely produced between 1404 and 1438. This means that the calves from whom the calf skin was taken lived between 1404 and 1438. They also took some samples of the ink and sent it to a company called McCrone Associates, and the senior research microscopist, Joe Barabi, he did a chart on them and wrote back what he said, and he summarizing the letter, it was basically that those samples are comparable with what might have been the same time as the calves. Now, who wrote it? Well, lots of suggestions, most of them wrong, probably all of them wrong. Roger Bacon, Antonio Averlino, Leonardo da Vinci, and on and on and on. John Dee, Edward Kelly. Okay? Roger Bacon, of course, lived way before we think it was produced, though there's always the possibility that he came up with something which was later transcribed onto calfskins, vellum, of a later time. So, is it a forgery by Voynich himself? Well, he knew how to forge. He was a rare book dealer. He knew this stuff in great detail. But if he were going to forge it, did he have 15th century vellum? Did he use ink that was consistent at that time? Did he know about the other things that verify, like the 17th century letters that mention the manuscript? Did he make no mistake? So most people say no. Also, there is a clue, very small, on this page. It's a fold-out page. So I have two samples of the Voynich here if anyone wants to look. There's a little picture of a castle on one page. And if you look at the battlements, they have this dip in them, which is called a swallowtail merlon. And at that time, there's really only one place in Europe that a swallowtail merlon exists, which is in northern Italy. So if it came from the 1400s, how did it get finally into the hands of Voynich, Wilfrid Voynich? Well, we think it got to Emperor Rudolf II. I'll talk more about him. Then to Athanasius Kircher. He was a great intellectual of the time. And then eventually from there, from the 1600s to the 1800s, to the Villa Undergoning, which is where we had that reunion I was talking about. And then to Voynich. And then to the Voynich Library. So a bit about Rudolf. He was the Holy Roman Emperor. He was a patron of arts and learning. What he did is said to have led to the scientific revolution. And he liked to collect curiosities. And in his papers, it is said that he paid 600 gold ducats, about 2 kilograms of gold, depending, there's different kinds of ducats, for a book, which might have been the Voynich Manuscript. And from him, the book probably went to his botanist. These are a few pages. Just a second. You can see in many of them they have this cut root. Okay? another place with a cut root. So anyone here who studies plants, this could be a seedling, something sprouting. It could be the way they transported plants. They wouldn't always transport the whole plant. They might just transport the root and then give the root water at the destination from which to get the plant. This is an interesting detail. But none of the plants can be identified. For example, on the left, we have the Voynich Manuscript showing what to many would look like a passion flower, but with 5 petals. Anyone who knows passion flowers always know they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 petals. Go all over the world, passion flowers, 10 petals. The Voynich Manuscript, 5. Why? We don't know. Also, the leaves are not the same, and the roots are not the same. And the flower isn't the same. So, another mystery. Many of the flowers are like that, where we can identify the flowers, but not the leaves, or we can identify the leaves, but not the flowers, and so forth. The one on the left is interesting. It has what looks like leaves for roots. On the right, we have a large cut root. In one page, we have what looks like a dragon sitting on a leaf, perhaps sucking, I don't know, some sort of flower, what do you call it, on the inside? Yeah, yeah. So it may be feeding on that plant. Also, you can see just the picture of the plant is not particularly detailed. We have kind of a general idea of the leaves, and then some kind of took green and smeared on it. They didn't do a really good job there. When I gave this talk a few weeks ago on a podcast, and someone called in and said, I'm having a Dungeons and Dragons game, and I want to use the Voynich Manuscript as one of the things in the game. And I said, oh, you gotta use this page. You gotta tell people there's a dragon in the Voynich Manuscript, and then see if they can find it. So I'm telling you guys, there's the dragon. And then there's another section of pages, which are called the balneological pages. Balneological means bathing, water. And they are all in kind of a green water with women in them, all without clothing, and all perhaps seeming pregnant women bathing in these waters. We don't know, but we can see that there's always these tubes coming in from the outside and going out. So the water, like at the bottom right, you can see that there's a tube coming in from the top left and a tube going out at the bottom right. So the water is definitely flowing. And when there's multiple pools on the same page, you can see that the water is flowing from one pool to another pool to another pool. And one person that I showed this to, because I love showing the Voynich Manuscript to different people and ask them, what do you see? What do you think when you look at these? And they said, well, obviously, the water at the top is the purest. It has the highest concentration of herbs. And then it flows to the next pool, which is not as good. So that's the cheaper pool. And then it flows to the next pool, which is not as good. And that's also a cheaper pool. So depending on how much you pay, do you get the good stuff or not going down? But what does that mean? We don't know.
Question. The number at the top of that page, I assume is the numbered page 84.
Oh, the other one, I think,
Go forward to.
forward to.
There we go.
At the top right, 84. There's been quite a bit of discussion about that. The pages are currently numbered in order, but it's generally believed that these numbers were added afterwards. So, yeah, because it's been 600 years, which is a lot of generations. If you think a generation is 20 years, there's been many generations of people that have had this. They may have rearranged pages, they may have added numbers. So it's possible that all the bathing pictures weren't all together. Maybe it was a few plants and a few bathing and a few cut up plants. We don't know. So the rosettes page, again, we have these tubes. If you look around the outside of this circle, you see tubes going outward. It's almost an anatomical drawing, like if these were veins, or it could be water, it could be blood, could be anything. But there's definitely these cut tubes going around the outside. And on the inside, if you can see it, are what looks like buildings with the minarets on top. So again, a big mystery. The castle that I was talking about is, if you can see my finger, is right up in that area. But where again, they're all pointing as though they're on the outside of a circle. So it's very rare that you would have any building there that's oriented north-south. It's also possible that this is a map, because all of these rosettes are connected. Let me see if I can do this with my mouse. Can you see my mouse? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So in between the rosettes, we have these sections which almost look like a bridge with waves lapping up against it. I'm kind of theorizing there, but there are connections between each of these rosettes. So again, we don't know. Some call it the rosettes page, some call it the map page. There's also a section with zodiac signs, and I know I'm jumping from one to the other because there's just so much to talk about here. And these we recognize: Sagittarius, the archer; Aries, the ram; Scorpio, the scorpion. And again, with little women around the outside. Here, they're not in pools. Here, they're standing in little barrels. And they're generally holding a tiny flower all the way around the side there. So most of the zodiac symbols are there. A couple are not. Is this because they were lost? We don't know. And some of these pages also are very faded. I believe that this is because this manuscript at one point in its existence was in someone's library and was open to those pages, and so the light kind of made those pages fade. So this again kind of points to the general area of Europe, these kinds of drawings. Then there's this section where we have these plants that are all kind of cut up, and these tall tubes. So are these containers? We don't know. There are some theories that these were early microscopes. The way they would make a microscope at the time is they would put containers of water one over the other and then look through the water to get an enlargement. Maybe they're tubes. Maybe they're something else. I don't know. So we call this the herbal section.
Does the language appear to be consistent throughout the book?
Okay, does the language appear to be consistent throughout the book?
I.e. the structure of the words?
The structure of the words. Great question. I'll be covering that in a couple slides, but excellent question. So the purpose of the images is unclear. And then there's a section with no pictures, just these little stars down the left-hand side. This was studied extensively by World War cryptographers, like William Friedman put a lot of effort into this, and the only thing they could come up with was that it might be a constructed language. Now, this is not Voynich. These are other herbals that were created hundreds of years before the Voynich. And these are pages that are showing actual plants and describing what those plants were. They tended to be written in Arabic or perhaps in Latin. So there is a similarity between these other herbals and the Voynich. So maybe somebody was trying to create something that looked like that. I don't know. Okay. But there's really no information on the exact time except for what we have with the radiocarbon or the area. I mean, we can guess that maybe it's Europe. There's no symbols, like normally you get pages from that time period and you get the gold around the outside. It's called the marginalia. But we have nothing specific on it. All right, now we're going to go through encryption. So how was the text created? It's an unknown script. Is it encrypted? Is it nonsense? We don't know. We've done a lot of statistical analyses of the Voynich text. I won't be going through all of these, but I will be giving you a few. So we know that there's about 35,000 words and letters, 170,000 letters, and there's an alphabet size of about 23 letters. But it's tough to say the exact alphabet because when you have this handwritten stuff, it's difficult to say what's a letter and what isn't a letter. For example, if you take in English the handwritten letter M with those lovely loops, M, and say you're an alien coming down and you're looking at an M that you've never seen before. Is this one letter, 2 letters, 3 letters? You don't know. But we made some guesses as to what's a letter and what isn't a letter, and we guessed that it's about 23 letters, which is an interesting total. It is consistent throughout the document, and there also is a consistency to which letters tend to appear at the beginning of a word and which appear at the end of a word. And we've run some letter frequency tests on a lot of letter frequency tests. And so we know that certain characters appear more frequently than other characters. And this is consistent with a simple substitution cipher. Okay? So if we're looking at letter frequencies, say in German, English, Latin, or Italian, you can see that there's this kind of curve that you get. And the Voynich has something very similar. So if we take English, yeah, it could be similar to the Voynich. Or if we're looking at word frequencies, not letter frequencies, but word frequencies, well, in English, the most common word is the word the, followed by and, of, a, and so forth. And in German, you have und, die, and so forth. In Voynich, if we're looking for common words, we also have a similar kind of curve. I'll leave this up for a sec so I can see some people on the back trying to see it. Okay. So this is closer to German. And if we look at word lengths, so a natural language, German, English, French, one of those, is going to have this kind of a curve, that there's going to be some words that start with 2 letters, 3 letters, 4 letters, and going down to 10 letters. On average, words are around 5 letters long. And there we have the Voynich, very similar. So this is, again, is consistent with a simple substitution. So observation 1, it looks like a natural language, but it's not clear which one. So we go on. Word lengths, again. So there are no words with 1 letter. There's no word that looks like an A or an I. There's very few letters with, very few words with 2 letters. Words with more than 10 letters, none. Also, I should say, there's no punctuation anywhere in the Voynich manuscript. There's no periods or commas, nothing like that.
But spaces between words?
There are spaces between words. we think. Maybe each of those is a word, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's first letter, first word, second letter, second word, and onward. Letter serial correlations, so the dependency of a letter on the previous ones. This is, for example, if you have the letters I and E in English next to each other. You can make a guess as to what's the next letter in there. If you have the letters T, T, O, N in an English word, you can make a guess as to what might be after that. And Voynich does very much have this serial correlation. If there's certain letters that are next to each other, there are probably certain letters that are going to be after that or before it. This is the opinion of a linguist that we had, Jan Holst, who knows 20 languages very well and has basic languages, 60 languages, and we contacted him and say, what do you think? And he said, well, the text of the Voynich manuscript is very different from any language I know. So we said, we're quoting you on that. So it looks like a natural language, but it doesn't look like a natural language. We don't know. So, is it a natural language in an unknown script? Maybe, maybe not. Is it an encrypted text? Maybe. Is it nonsense? It could be nonsense. I'll go more into that in a second. So, we have on the left, we have natural language, letters coming out that are natural language, and on the right, we have nonsense, and it's somewhere in between those two. We don't know. All right, now, alleged solutions. People claim to have solved the Voynich manuscript all the time. We get them every year, sometimes every month or two. A lot of times the news picks these things up uncritically and will immediately put a headline. Voynich manuscript solved, deciphered after 600 years, and Alberta computer science, blah, 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 blah. AI may have just decoded the Voynich manuscript. And it's, no. And we have entire websites dedicated to no. Nick Pelling is someone I'll mention. He loves debunking all of these claimed solutions. And he has a list of all of these solutions and saying what no and why they're no. Right? He is truly a manuscript expert. He's written a book on the Voynich manuscript. And Klaus, my co-author, he has a test for if the solution is correct. And this is inspired by tests used in the skeptics community, because a lot of the claimed solutions are claiming it's in another language. It's in Syrian. It's in ancient Babylonian. And these are not languages that he knows. So how can he verify whether or not their solution is correct? So what he's done is he takes a line from the Voynich manuscript at random, some line that he knows, and he puts all the words together but separated, so you can't really tell. And then he takes another line where he takes a line from, or a word from each line and puts those all together. So if you knew the language of the Voynich manuscript, you would be able to look and say, I know what this says, even if you couldn't really read it. And so he would put both of these lines out to someone and say, can you read these lines? And so far, no one has taken the test. You know, to say which ones make sense, even if they can't read it exactly. And no one has officially taken the test yet, but several people have simply said, oh, that test won't work with my solution. So they kind of back away from it. So we say, okay, that's not a real solution. Okay, now serious solution attempts. So what if it's just spontaneous nonsense? Okay, random letters. And there was actually a test done at a university where they took some people, put them in a room, and said, just write whatever you want, just write nonsense. And they found that there are patterns in nonsense when people are writing nonsense. And we don't believe that it's just nonsense. Could it be an expanding cipher? So, for example, for each letter in the manuscript, that it means some syllable or some code word. So, for example, the word Voynich at the bottom, V would be SYX, O would be MBA, Y would be HDL, and these would be written out in that Voynichese. Then there's the stencil method. This got a lot of attention, like Scientific American and others. Gordon Rugg came up with this, where you take a stencil and you put it over various letters or symbols, and you keep going. And it leads to text that sort of looks like Voynich, but not identical. And I've contacted Gordon and I've asked, have you reproduced any single section of the Voynich manuscript? And he said no. So, you know. There's this hypothesis called autocopy, where you select and modify one word in each line above it. So there's this word on the 5th line, and you modify one letter from a similar word in the 3rd line. Same here, one letter. So you get words that are very similar, but not the same. So I just want to hold this up a sec and kind of let you guys think about it and say, if you were going to create pages of text that looked like real text, how would you do it? How would you do it? Would you roll dice? Would you use stencils? Would you, I mean, yeah, you can just write anything you want, but the Voynich really looks like it has some sort of cohesion on it. So I'm going to talk about other encrypted books for a minute. This is an encrypted book list. Klaus and I helped, but it's mostly Klaus, created this. His book number 1 is the Voynich Manuscript. And then anytime he heard of other books, he added them to this list. And then we categorized the list. Okay. And we also took the books as, if we could, figure out which time period that they were from. So we have 6 books from the 15th century. Voynich Manuscript is from the 15th century. So there weren't any books like this before the Voynich. Also very interesting. And then we kind of time through the different time periods. But the Voynich Manuscript is definitely one of the oldest encrypted, if it's encrypted, books. Okay. Then we looked at the types of books that were there. What kinds of books were people encrypting? Diaries. Top 40 books in there we identified as diaries, some by women, some by men, some encrypted, some not encrypted. Then secret society books, knowledge books, literature, puzzles, art, hoaxes, religious, notebooks, and 3 books that were some category. We couldn't put them in the other categories. But what is a Voynich? We don't know. Is it a diary? Secret society? Knowledge? We don't know. So this is one that we do know. This one's from around 1420, called the Bellicorum Instrumentorum, and by Giovanni Fontana. And it is at the Bavarian State Library in Munich. So it doesn't have plants, but you can see that it's similar in that there are drawings and there is a text at the bottom. And this was decrypted. I don't remember what it says, sorry. But you can see the script that was used at that time. And this was intended as a knowledge book. They were presenting information about the pictures that were there. This is from 1900. This was Ernest Rinzi's book, also solved. And he was someone who painted miniatures. Very, very, very small font. And this was deciphered by Tony Gaffney. And I think it was an autobiography. But the pictures in it are just gorgeous, just gorgeous. And this was considered as we put it in the category of art book. And then there's the Stegonographia from 1499 by Johann Trithemius. And it has messages that are useless messages that were disguised as spell instructions. They looked like instructions to communicate with angels, but in actuality they were a code that basically said, ha ha, fool on you. And was actually solved around 1995 by 2 different people at the same time, but they didn't know that each was working on the other. So this was considered as a hoax book. This is the Soiga book from the 16th century. We do know that the text was generated with an algorithm, and it was solved in 1998, and it doesn't say anything. So we categorize this one as a hoax. Delshau's picture books had fantastic flying machines that were illustrated. So it was sort of a science fiction book. And he wrote 13 books. And we put this one, it was fiction, but we categorized it as a hoax. So we have the nonsense books or the hoax books, and there are others on the list. So is the Voynich manuscript, knowing what we know about the hoax books, is the Voynich manuscript a nonsense book? So there are nonsense books from the period in question. The fantasy plants definitely make it look interesting. Little women in little bathing tubs definitely make the books look interesting. And the fold-out pages make a book look interesting. So, but it's possible the Voynich could be a nonsense book. So, kind of tying this all together. What was the purpose of the Voynich? So Klaus and I have spent a lot of time talking about, a lot of time talking about this. And why was the Voynich created? Well, we believe it was probably created to sell the book to a rich collector, in this case, Emperor Rudolf II. So that's our favorite hypothesis. Was it created by someone who was mentally ill? Possible. And these are some pictures that were created by mentally ill people that we've gotten. And they will have pictures, and we have the text all around them. So possible. Maybe it was created by a mentally ill person who was a member of a wealthy family. And maybe it was originally not as well written as it is now, but maybe that family then chose to hire a scribe and have it written out in a better font on better pages. You got to think, in the 1400s, getting that much calfskin, not easy. Calfskin, not cheap either. You're having to get hundreds of pages of well-created vellum. It's not the highest quality of vellum, but it's pretty high up there. And you're also getting all the inks, the gall inks, and it has to be someone who has enough leisure time to create this. So, who created it? We don't know. People sometimes ask me, if you could go back in time and meet any one person, who would you meet? You know, would you want to meet Jesus? Would you want to meet Muhammad? Would you want to meet Abraham Lincoln, or all those? And I say, I want to meet the person who created the Voynich. So I can say, what? So I have a third favorite hypothesis, which is that it was a sales catalog for healing ointments. So, how am I doing on time here? Oh, good. So, for example, we're thinking 1400s, so this is about 100 years after the Great Plague. So people are a little more health conscious, and they want to buy good quality stuff. So when you get an ointment or a lotion or whatever you're getting, the quality is going to create the price of that. So the seller might be going, oh, you want ointment? Here, I have ointment for you. And they go, well, what's the price? And he says, well, this is the price. That's expensive. He says, yes, but look at the herbs that are used to create this ointment, they come from very, very far away, very costly to get. So the manuscript may have been something like that, saying, well, I don't recognize any of these plants. They must have come from really far away, therefore they're really expensive, therefore this ointment I'm getting, which is in this cylindrical thing, is also very expensive. Maybe that kind of puts together. Some people, who, when I've shown them the Voynich, their theory is that it was a something for women who were trying to conceive. So women who wanted to become pregnant would bathe in these different pools, and the top pool would have the highest density of herbness, say, and that would be the most costly, and then less and less going down. So I just say this is impossible. But when people ask me what do I think the Voynich is, it depends on the day of the week, or just the day, what I'm going to say. I don't know. So there's a lot of questions still unanswered. Decryption may or may not be possible, but so far no one's managed it, and generations of cryptographers have worked on this. It could have just been created by a charlatan or a mentally ill person. If you want to learn more about the Voynich, the #1 website is by René Zandbergen, and you can get to him at voynich.nu. And Nick Pelling has a website at ciphermysteries.com. He's also got a site where he's also writing about other ciphers as well. The PhreakNIC25 library has at their collection site a wonderful, wonderful site that lists all kinds of different things about the Voynich. Many of the pictures I've shown here on these PowerPoint slides are from the PhreakNIC's website. You can also go to the Yak. Yak.net has a complete collection. In fact, that was one of the first galleries of the Voynich pages on the web. So I thank the Yak for that. There's also, more recently, this book was created by the PhreakNIC in association with Yale University Press. It's got all the foldouts, which I can't do, and hold the microphone. You could like stand there and show it to the audience. And when I got this book, the first thing I did was I looked at all the foldouts, because I've sat and I've gone through every single fold-out page, and I know which page folds in which direction, and they got the foldouts right. So this one gets the Elonka thumbs up of approval. Okay, thanks. Yeah. I should also say that in terms of, I promise I will. I should also say that of the hoax solutions, the people who say, I've solved it, but they haven't really solved it, people contact me every week, 2 weeks, once a month, and sometimes they send me I can just tell by looking at their email that they haven't got it. You know, if it's a misspelled subject line or something like that. But this guy, okay, you can hold this one too.
Okay.
You could. My assistant is coming up.
Your beautiful assistant.
Okay. He published this entire book, self-published. It's got pictures of Voynich, pictures of the individual letters. It's basically him saying, I've solved the Voynich, and here I'm showing you how. And I've looked through the book, but the amount of effort that he put into this book, I know how much it takes to write a book when I have publishers working with me. So I recommend people just kind of take a look at this just to see how much effort that people are putting into these.
Ironic
Thank you.
that he might be doing the same thing. Ironic that he might be doing the same thing as Voynich.
He
trying
might.
to sell,
He might be doing the same thing as Voynich. It might be the same
make a book
brain.
to sell.
Okay, I have time for a few questions. I see the Yak. Strick.
I saw YouTube recently claiming they had given it to handwriting experts who had identified there were at least 3 distinct hands and possibly some more. If you confirm that, or
I've seen many different studies about how many people wrote it, and was it a man's handwriting or a woman's handwriting. So I'll just say, yeah, between 1 and 3. Yeah. To confirm it, I don't know.
Where's the original house?
Was the original?
Where is the original?
The original is at Yale University in the Voynich Rare Book Library. Ask for MS 408. They probably won't give it to you. I know I have only one friend, Glenn Maranker. He's the ex-CTO from Apple. He was able to access it and touch the Voynich. And I know Renee Zambergen has done it. They were actually able to take the binding apart a little bit, but they treat it with must-wear gloves care.
Were the drawings done first, and were the drawings and the text done by the same person at the same time?
Were the drawings done first as the person who did the writing?
Yes.
We don't know. We know that some pages it looks like the text went in first and then the drawing. And some places it looks like the drawing went in first and then the text. We have at least a page or two where you can see that there's text that's written with a ragged right margin. So it looks like it was getting ready to put some sort of a picture in there. But again, we're not sure. That's the thing about Voynich, is we're not sure. I've got one image of the Voynich, which I didn't put on a slide, but I'll show to anyone here maybe when we have time. I've taken this one image. It's about 2 inches high, and it's the width of 1 page. And I've asked people, if you were blind, or if you were describing this image to someone who was blind, how would you describe this image? Anyone here that I've done that for, Strick? Maybe? No? Okay. And every single person has given it a different description. There are no 2 people who have described it in the same way. So that's something about the Voynich, is that everyone that looks at it sees something different. It reflects something different to them. Very mysterious manuscript. Yes.
Is it accurate? I've read that handwriting experts have said that it appears that the person did not hesitate and has a smooth hand in writing.
Okay. Excellent question. And it's does it look like whoever wrote it was confident in writing the script? I think is what you're asking. And it looks like this was written by a professional scribe. There aren't any crossouts. There's no liquid paper anywhere in it. There are a couple places where the vellum was torn, and so you can see that someone has kind of stitched it back up very carefully. But in terms of the actual text, it's all written very, very confidently.
That was one of the hypotheses, that if somebody was creating fake, that at some point in time they would be pausing to think about the next fake letter that they were going to be writing.
Right, yeah, typically, as an author, I write, I pause, I think, I switch to a different pen, the ink color changes, you know, you have all that. But no, we haven't seen anything like that. Yes?
Is possibility that the vellum being valuable was recycled, bleached, or just a reused book? The value of the paper, recycled paper then, was much more valuable than it is now. Anything about that?
So the value of the vellum at the time, I don't know the exact value. It's possible that there were blank pages of vellum that were acquired hundreds of years later. So instead of the Voynich being created in the 1400s, it might have been created in the 1600s or so, even in the 1900s by Voynich himself. He just got some old vellum and wrote this out. He would have had to use inks that were comparable with that time, and then there's just a lot of other things that would have had to fall into place, but it's possible. Yes?
Do you have an opinion on the manuscript that you haven't seen anywhere else?
Do I have an opinion on the manuscript that I haven't seen anywhere else? Oh, I mean, I've seen the opinion about that it's possibly medicinal herbs. That's in one of the books about the Voynich. I forget who wrote about that. I mean, there's other opinions that you can, it was written, space aliens came in, and all kinds of possible, but no, I don't have any firm opinion that I've seen that I haven't seen. Any other questions?
Is anybody drawn? any-
Hands up here
Yeah,
and then
sorry,
I'll come back
no,
here.
go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, are there any cryptanalysis techniques that you saw in the manuscript that don't jive with its time period? I guess we're assuming that if it's built during this time period, then those cryptographic techniques at the time would be consistent. Are there any new techniques that were in there that might have been used?
Are there any cryptanalytic techniques that don't jive with that time period?
Yeah.
We're talking like a visionaire cipher, for example.
Maybe they were just ahead of their time
Yeah.
for the encryption.
Possible, yep, might be. I mean, I doubt it's got like DES or something like that. But no, not that I can think of. Oh wait, you had a question?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, is anybody drawn, I guess, connections similar to the Book of Kells and all of the rich colors and things like that to this?
Has anyone seen
The Book of Kells, you've seen the drawings and all of that stuff done by monks in, I believe, Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good example of what they were capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure.
Manuscript.
Right, and I'm not sure if anybody's.
Like if someone was going to sit down and replicate the Voynich from start to finish, it would probably take several months. I don't know if that answers the question. Okay.
It was more of a.
Okay,
Two questions.
two questions.
First one is, are you aware of anyone having actually tried to do any work with the diagram figures, trying to, most of them are geometric, they have lobes. Has anyone tried to convert that to numerical formula, have any sort, see if there's any, where the Rosetta you have on the screen right now, you have so many 80 lobes on it, you have so many blue, you have so many outer pieces. Has anyone actually tried to catalog or characterize the actual diagrams numerically?
Has anyone tried to characterize the diagrams, such as the rosette that's on the screen?
Sure. So you have so many items on there that are currently blue color. You have so many lobes connected to each of those. I was curious if you have a numeric code behind the page.
Oh, numeric
Has
codes.
anyone actually done any work with the diagrams correctly, trying to catalog the characters?
I know that people have tried spinning them and looking at them to see, because they do have this symmetry, as you can see going around.
That's not aware of anything.
Okay,
The
my second question.
was, has anyone approached the language itself as being a different phonetic for an existing language?
Has anyone approached the language?
So English, we have standard phonetic pronunciation of the alphabet we have. I'm asking, has anyone considered the graphs as an existing or sub-dialect of an own language, but they came up with their own pronunciation guide for it.
Right.
Something simplified, something used just to take care of monastery setting.
Right. Has anyone come up with a way of, like, is it possible that this is a micro language from some area we don't know about? Is that sort of?
Well, it was more, maybe a language we already know is just using a different phonetic alphabet.
A language we know, but using a different phonetic alphabet.
Right, so how Old English is rotated, it's the High English, the Modern English, etc.
High English, Modern English, I don't know. It's possible. Go for it. Go for it. I'm serious. You can't do any worse than everyone else has. Right? Okay? Straight.
So you should train a large language model with it, and you can ask questions in Voynich and get answers in Voynich.
I know people have been going at the LLMs, the large language models with it, and I have not seen any success, but I like the idea of asking it questions in Voynich and getting the answers in Voynich. Even if I can't understand them, it would be kind of cool. Okay? Anything else? Okay? All right, I'll be up here for a couple minutes, and thank you very much.
We have a book at registration. She's going to sign them. So that's a pleasure.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
So I'll be over.